The ending of Outlander Season 8 does not shout, it whispers, then it hits like a wave. And when it does, you feel your chest tighten and your eyes burn, because this is the goodbye you were not ready for. Picture a cold gray morning, kind that makes breath turn to white air, and hear the soft crunch of steps on wet ground. This is where our story opens, with Claire looking at the world as if time itself has slowed down, not because the clock is broken, but because the heart wants one more minute. One more touch, one more promise kept. The years have carved lines on faces, yet love still stands firm like an old oak after the storm. And you can sense it in every glance that passes between Claire and Jamie. A language without words that says, I am here, I am yours. I will walk with you wherever the path bends. The camera of your mind moves closer, and you notice the small things that tell the truth. The way Claire steadies her hands before she reaches for Jamie, the way Jamie sets his shoulders as if taking on weight so she does not have to carry it alone. They have crossed oceans and wars in the strange corridors of time. They have lost homes and made new ones. They have buried fear and raised hope. And each moment in Season 8 feels like a letter written to everything they have survived. Even the silence has meaning now. The house groans in the wind. A kettle sings, a fire pops. And every sound feels like a memory coming back to sit beside. Then there is a scene at dawn when Claire steps outside and the land is washed in pale light. She closes her eyes as if listening to the heartbeat of the earth. She remembers a younger self who leaped without looking. A healer who believed skill could save everyone. And she knows now that love is also a kind of medicine, slow and stubborn. A warmth you pass from hand to hand. Jamie follows her out. No words are needed. He stands at her side and rests a hand over hers. And in that quiet touch, you can feel the weight of vows kept across years and miles. Season 8 lets you feel the cost of every choice, the way fate asks for payment in patience, in courage, in letting go when holding on would only bring harm. The stakes are not only battles or kings, they are smaller and sharper, like the fear of waking to an empty bed, the ache of a child taking a path you cannot walk for them, the question of whether a home is a place or a person. And Outlander answers by showing us that home is a pair of hands that know your name. A voice that steadies you when the world shakes. When the day grows brighter, plans move forward, letters are folded, maps are studied, friends are gathered. And yet the heart of the episode keeps returning to Claire and Jamie at the table. Sharing bread and glances, choosing honesty when fear would be easier. They speak of what matters. Of safety and duty and the pull of history. They speak of the line between bravery and pride. Of when to fight and when to step back so that others may live by the time the sun is high. You already feel the ending begin, not as a sudden cut, but as a gentle turning of the page. There is acceptance in their eyes. A soft understanding that every great journey ends by giving itself to the people who will carry it next. Season 8 makes room for that handover. It honors the love that built this life. And it prepares you for the moment when love must also let go. Not as surrender, but as faith that what was planted will keep growing. Stay with me, because the next part goes deeper into how this final path is chosen. What they risk, what they protect, and why the tears you feel building now will fall when the last light fades and the story leaves its mark on your heart there. It's a moment in Season 8 when the air feels heavy, as if even the sky knows what is coming. And Claire sits with her journal open, her pen hovering, not because she has no words, but because too many rush forward at once. Love, loss, fear, hope, all pressing against the page she wants to capture. Everything before time steals it, the smell of the wood fire, the roughness of Jamie's hand in hers, echo of laughter in rooms that may soon fall silent. This is not just writing, it is a way of keeping life alive, a shield against forgetting. A small defiance against the pull of history. Jamie steps into the room. The light falls on his face, and you can see that same weight pressing on him too. He is a man who has fought countless battles, but the hardest war is not fought with sword or musket. It is fought in the quiet moments when he looks at his family and wonders if he can keep them safe. His shoulders carry the burden of choice, The kind of choice that bends a man in half, stay and risk everything, or move and leave behind what feels like home. Jamie's silence in these scenes is louder than any speech. His pause before answering Claire tells you more than any grand monologue could. Because sometimes love is measured in what you cannot bring yourself to say. The world outside their home grows sharper. The drums of war beat louder, and Season 8 makes you feel that the walls of peace are thin, cracks showing with every news of battle, with every whispered warning. Friends and neighbors begin to look over their shoulders. Children sense the fear in their parents' eyes. And yet, amid all of this, Claire and Jamie choose to hold tighter, as if love itself can shield them from muskets and cannon fire. You can almost hear their hearts whisper, "We have survived this long. We can survive a little longer, but survival is not promised, and that truth hangs like smoke in the air." There is a dinner scene where voices rise. Plans are argued, futures are debated, some believe in staying strong. Others whisper of retreat, and in that chaos, Claire looks across the table at Jamie. Her gaze steady, her voice calm, reminding him and reminding us that they have faced worse storms together, but this time it feels different, heavier, final. Like standing on a shore and watching the tide come in, knowing it will sweep away everything not nailed down. And the question is not if, but when. What makes this section of the story unique is how personal it feels. The battles are no longer distant, faceless wars. They are close. They are at the door. And the cost will not be numbers written in a ledger. It will be names we know, voices we love, faces we have watched grow older across 8 seasons. Outlander does not spare you here. It does not look away from the truth that history is cruel, and love, no matter how strong, must sometimes bow to the weight of time as night falls in that episode. Claire finally writes in her journal, her words flowing like a confession. She writes not only for herself, but for whoever will come after. She writes for the children, for the grandchildren, anyone who might one day ask what it was like to live through love and war at the same time. Her hand shakes, tears fall on the page, and yet she keeps going. Because stories are the only way to make sure love does not vanish when the bodies are gone. And in this moment you understand that Outlander has always been about memory, about carrying one another through time, not just in flesh, but in story. By the time she closes the book, you feel the weight of her choice. She will keep loving. She will keep healing. She will keep writing, even when the world tries to silence her. And Jamie, standing in the doorway, gives a small nod, as if to say, "I see you, I hear you." And we will face the tide together. This is where Season 8 deepens its hold, reminding you that every farewell is also a memory being written. And that is why the ending cuts so deep, because it is not only the end of a story, it is the passing of a memory we have all carried with them since the very beginning. There comes a point in Season 8 when the choices are no longer about survival alone, but about what kind of mark will be left behind. And this is where the story grips you by the heart, because Jamie and Claire are no longer simply living for themselves. They are living for the generations that will walk after them, the children, the grandchildren, the names that will echo long after their voices fall silent. And every step they take in this final stretch feels heavy with legacy, like walking across soil that is already sacred because of the blood and love poured into it. One of the most striking moments arrives when Jamie stands with Brianna, his daughter, and you can see in his eyes the ache of a man who knows time is running thin. He has fought to protect her since the day he knew she existed, yet here she stands grown with a family of her own, ready to carry a future he might never see. He does not need to say much. A father's pride is written across his face, and in a quiet line, he admits that she has become stronger than he ever imagined, stronger than even he could have hoped for, the kind of strength that will outlast him. And that is when you feel the pang of inevitability, because this is what Season 8 wants you to understand. That love sometimes means preparing to leave, rather than holding on. Claire to face as her own trial of legacy. Hers is not the sword, but the knowledge she carries, the healing she has practiced, the science and the wisdom from 2 different centuries. She looks at her children and wonders what to pass down, what to protect, what truths to speak, and what to keep hidden. Her role has never been just to heal wounds of the flesh, but to pass forward the hope that healing is always possible, that broken bodies and broken hearts can still mend. In one scene, she sits with her grandchild, telling stories not of war, but of love, and you realize that even in the middle of chaos, she is planting seeds, soft and small, that will bloom long after she is gone. Season 8, it is not only about lovers, it is about parents, about teachers, about guardians of memory. And their greatest act of love is not in fighting to stay, but in preparing others to live without them. There is a turning point in Season 8, when time itself feels like a living character, breathing against the skin of Claire and Jamie, reminding them that nothing lasts forever. And this is where the story becomes unlike anything that came before. Because the sacrifices are no longer just about the body, they are about the soul, about what one is willing to surrender to keep love alive. Even if love cannot stay in the same form, Claire finds herself standing once again at the edge of a stone circle, the ancient gateway that has always pulled her between centuries. And the weight of choice presses harder than it ever has. She has traveled through time before for survival, for family, for love. But now the question is crueler. Does she step forward to secure safety for her bloodline, or does she stay rooted in the present to finish her life beside Jamie? The stones hum, the air bends, and for the first time she feels not just pulled, but torn in two, and you can see the fear in her eyes. Not the fear of death, but of leaving half of her heart behind. Jamie watches her with steady silence, and you can feel his struggle in the way his jaw clenches, the way his hand trembles when it reaches for hers. He has always been a man of action, ready to fight, ready to bleed, but this battle offers no sword, no musket, no clear enemy. It demands something harder, acceptance, and acceptance is a wound deeper than steel. He whispers that he would rather live one last day with her than 100 years without her. And in that single vow, the air thickens with emotion, because you know he means it. He always has the season paint sacrifice not as a single dramatic gesture, but as a collection of small, heartbreaking choices. Claire gives up her chance to practice modern medicine in the way she once dreamed. Jamie abandons the quiet peace of home he longed to keep. Friends leave behind land and heritage. Children are forced to carry burdens they are too young to bear. And every sacrifice is layered upon the next until you feel the weight pressing. On your own chest, it is not one death. It is the 1,000 little deaths of dreams cut short, of plans rewritten, of futures never lived. What makes this part so unique is how Outlander does not shout its sorrow. It whispers it. It lets you see Claire patching a torn sleeve while her eyes drift toward Jamie. Knowing time is slipping, it lets you watch Jamie mend a fence with rough hands, even as war closes in, as if holding the world together one nail at a time might delay the inevitable. These are not grand sacrifices. They are ordinary ones. But it is in the ordinary that the story finds its deepest ache, because it reminds you that love's greatest acts are rarely fireworks. They are the quiet decisions made in the shadows. Of loss, there is a scene in which Claire finally admits to Jamie that part of her wish is she could go back to where it all began. Not to change anything, but just to feel the first spark again, to relive that moment when the world opened and there. Hearts collided. Jamie answers not with words, but with a look that tells her he has been reliving that moment every day since, carrying it like a flame that never dimmed. And that is when you realize that sacrifice is not only about what is lost, but about what is carried forward. Memory itself becomes a form of survival. By the end of this turning point, you know that the tears will fall, not only for what ends, but for the beauty of what endures. Season 8 shows that love's final sacrifice is not death. It is choosing to live, fully in the face of it, to hold hands while the storm breaks, to keep writing in a journal even as the ink smears with tears, to tell stories that will outlast flesh. And in that way, Jamie and Claire prove that love can cross not just time, but endings themselves. What makes the ending of Season 8 so devastating is not only the events themselves, but the way they are felt. The way emotion drips slowly like water from a stone until you realize you are drowning in it. Outlander has always been a story of passion and resilience. But here the tears come not because love is lost, but because love proves itself unbreakable. Even in the shadow of farewell, there is a moment when Claire sits beside Jamie, and the silence between them is louder than any thunder. Her hands rest on his, and she traces the scars that have mapped his body like a second language. Scars of battles fought, of sacrifices made, of pain endured. She does not look at them with pity, but with reverence. Each mark is a story. Each line a proof that they lived fully, fiercely together. The camera lingers on her face, and you can see her fighting the tide of tears because even though he is beside her, the thought of letting go hovers like a storm cloud on the horizon. Jamie, ever the anchor, meets her gaze with calm strength, and yet his voice cracks as he speaks of promises. He admits that he once feared death, but now he fears only one thing: that time might take her from him before he is ready. It is the kind of line that cuts deeper than any blade, because you understand that true heartbreak does not come from losing yourself. It comes from imagining life without the one who holds your soul, and Claire's response is not words but a trembling breath, kind of breath that tells you the body is strong but the heart is breaking. The uniqueness of this section lies in how the show frames grief not as darkness, but as light. The ending will make you cry because it shows that love shines brightest when it knows its time is short. They begin to cherish the smallest moments, the brush of fingers when passing a cup, the warmth of shared laughter even when the world is crumbling, the quiet act of reading together by firelight. And each of these small sparks becomes precious. It is here that Outlander reminds us why fans have held on for so long, because it teaches that even in the face of loss, love is worth every tear. There is a farewell scene with family that pierces through the heart. Voices are steady, but eyes are wet. Words are spoken as if ordinary, yet everyone feels the weight of what is not being said. A child clings longer than usual. A friend grips Jamie's arm with too much force. Claire gives a smile that trembles at the edges, and the viewer is left with a lump in the throat, because you know these are not just goodbyes for the characters. They are goodbyes for us, the audience, who have walked alongside them for years. What breaks you most is that the characters themselves are aware. They are aware that their story is reaching its last page, and they live each second as if they are writing it carefully, not wasting a single word. Claire keeps journaling late into the night. Jamie keeps watching the horizon as if memorizing it. Their children begin to tell stories back to them, as if taking the torch from their hands. And you realize that grief and love are not separate, they are bound. You only weep this hard because the story gave you something worth losing. By the end of this section, you do not just feel sadness. You feel gratitude. Gratitude for having witnessed a love that crossed centuries, for having shared their meals, their battles, their laughter, and their tears. The ending will make you cry because it forces you to see yourself in them. In the way we all cling to the people we love, in the way we all fear the day we must say goodbye, Outlander Season 8 does not give you an escape. It gives you a mirror, and when you see your own heart reflected there, the tears fall freely. When the last chapter of Outlander Season 8 closes, the screen may go dark, but what lingers is the sound of fans weeping. Not just from sorrow, but from recognition that they have lived beside Claire and Jamie for years, that they have borrowed courage from their love, and now they must let it go. Fan reactions will not be ordinary, they will be tidal. Because this ending is not just the conclusion of a series, it is the farewell of a bond that felt alive. You can already imagine living rooms across the world where silence follows the final scene, and then someone breathes out sharply as if the air was held too long. Phones light up. Social media floods with words that stumble over themselves. People typing through blurred vision, posting screenshots of the last embrace, quoting the lines that tore them apart. And for once, the internet feels united in grief and awe. Fans will write that they are not ready, that they never will be. Because you cannot truly prepare to part with something that has carried you through your own storms. What makes the reaction unique is that Outlander was never just a show. It was a companion. Many viewers discovered it during their own seasons of loneliness or pain, and they leaned into Claire's resilience, Jamie's honor, the way love refused to yield even when history itself seemed determined to crush it. And so when fans cry, they are not crying only for fictional people. They are crying for the pieces of themselves they entrusted to the story. The memories of when they first pressed play years ago, of who they were then and who they are now across conventions and forums. You can picture the tributes forming. Fans dressing in tartan one last time, raising a glass of whiskey in honor of the Frasers. Fan art blooming online like wildflowers after rain, poems written, playlists shared, and essays posted about how Outlander taught them that love could be both fire and shelter. There will be debate about details as always, but under it all, a current of unity, a recognition that this ending, however heartbreaking, gave the story the dignity it deserved. Critics too will weigh in, and for once their voices will echo the audience, praising not just the scale of the production, but the intimacy of the farewell. Noting how rare it is for a long-running series to bow out with grace, to honor its characters, without betraying them, to choose emotional truth over spectacle. We'll call it one of television's most haunting finales. And they will be right, because the tears shed will not dry quickly. They will stay with the fans like an invisible tattoo, and perhaps the greatest proof of legacy will be in the quiet actions of fans after the finale. Someone will pick up the novels again and start rereading from the beginning. Someone else will. Tell a friend who has never seen the show, you must watch, but be prepared, it will break your heart. Others will simply sit with the silence, replaying in their mind the final lines. The final touch, carrying it like a secret flame, because Outlander has always been about carrying. Carrying love across time, carrying memory across generations, carrying hope across endings by the time the grief settles. What will remain is not despair, but gratitude. Fans will cry yes, but they will also whisper thank you. Thank you for 8 seasons of love that defied time. Thank you for showing us that devotion can be fiercer than war. Thank you for reminding us that goodbye does not mean the end, only the beginning of memory, and in that gratitude, Outlander will secure its place not just as a series, but as a legend, living in the hearts of its audience long after the final credits roll. The final notes of Season 8 feel less like the end of a show and more like the closing of a letter written across years. A letter that began the day Claire first touched the stones and found herself in a world that would test and transform her. Now that letter is sealed and it is handed to us, the audience, to carry forward. And the weight of it is almost too much to bear, because we know this story will never come again, in quite the same way Claire and Jamie's last scenes are not loud. They are not dressed in spectacle or grandeur. Instead, they are quiet, tender, deeply human, the kind of moments that remind you why you fell in love with them in the first place. A hand held just a little too tightly, a glance that lingers longer than breath, a voice that cracks on the edge of a promise. This is what Outlander leaves us with. Not the roar of battle, but the whisper of love. And that whisper carries more power than any shout could. The closing narration, paired with the final images, will strike deep, not because it surprises, but because it confirms what you always knew, that Jamie and Claire's love is not bound to one life or one century. It stretches beyond endings, beyond time. It teaches us that even when bodies fall and stories conclude, love can still echo. Love can still heal. Love can still live in memory. And when the credits roll, you find yourself not just grieving, but believing. Believing in the strength of what they shared for the fans. This final section is a gift wrapped in sorrow. A farewell that asks you not to forget, but to remember, to keep telling the story. To hold it in your heart the way Claire held Jamie's name through years of separation. The way Jamie held her memory like a talisman in the darkest nights. The show is passing that torch to us, saying, here, you carry it now. Because a love this great cannot die if someone remembers it tanned. So you cry. Not because you are empty, but because you are full. Full of every moment across 8 seasons. The laughter by firelight. The cries on battlefields. The births. The deaths. The storms. The silences. The journeys through time. And at the center of it all, the love that refused to break. It is that fullness that spills out of your eyes. And you realize Outlander's ending is not about despair. It is about gratitude. The kind of gratitude that aches, the kind that leaves you breathless as the screen fades. A quiet truth remains. We will never meet characters quite like Jamie and Claire again, but we will carry them with us in the way we look at our own loved ones, in the way we fight for what matters, in the way we believe in bonds that endure beyond logic or time. Outlander Season 8 gives us tears, but it also gives us a mirror, and in that mirror we see not just a story, but ourselves in. So the final words must echo the show itself. The story may end, but love does not. Jamie and Claire may step into history, but their footsteps are etched into our hearts forever. And that is why when the last scene fades, when silence falls, when you whisper goodbye, it feels less like an ending and more like a promise that the love we witnessed will keep living as long as we remember.